I'll start with roll call.
Director Assad Lucas.
Here.
Director Battistelli.
Here.
Director Goldstein.
Here.
Director Marsh Holshin.
Here.
Director Potter.
Here.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
So moved.
Second.
Director Assad Lucas.
Aye.
Director Battistelli.
Aye.
Director Goldstein.
Aye.
Director Marsh Holshin.
Aye.
Director Potter.
Aye.
All right, rise if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, superintendent update.
So I feel like a little bit of a Groundhog Day messenger here today. The things that are top of mind for me are the same ones that were top of mind last time. The large areas of focus for us as a leadership team right now relate to a lot of personnel decisions. We have a number of folks who are retiring, including Priscilla, who will be retiring at the end of this year. Pat Hamilton's retiring in April. We have a number of retirements in a number of important positions. The one that Francis holds, risk management, HR executive assistant, and on and on and on. So we're in a season of a lot of hiring. And often when you have somebody internally who fills one of those vacancies, it creates another round of hiring. So that's been quite a bit of what we've been doing of late and that we'll continue to do throughout the spring. The second significant issue that we're working on is budget preparation. And you've heard from me that because of federal COVID money running out after this year to the tune of about $10 million, and roughly $8 million of that we've used for things like intervention for students who are behind in reading and mathematics, and using folks to better support discipline and conduct and behavior needs of students at school, and other items of that sort. That we have challenging work to do in terms of right-sizing things now that those funds are out the door. And it's exacerbated by the declining enrollment trend that we and others in the metro region have been in for a number of years. So budget's another big item. There have been some things that have been victories of late, including word that we received since the last board meeting that our advocacy for the state to backfill in money that we haven't been receiving for the last 3 years because of our district now eclipsing 40% of free and reduced lunch pupils. The state has owed us money based on that fact and given what it requires us to do in terms of allocating at-risk funds to some of our charters. And so we're pleased that we're going to get $1.1 million for the last couple of years that we didn't receive those funds, and we'll get funding allocated to us this year unless they choose to change the law. So that's been a plus, and there's another big effort underway to get a more appropriate share of the $23 million the legislature appropriated for this year in the last session for low property value school districts with mill levy overrides. And so we're fighting hard to get a more appropriate share and to have less of that $23 million going to El Paso County, which is currently set to get more than $20 million of those funds. So budget and advocacy at the legislature around funding is a big part of the work right now. The third significant leg relates to the blueprint plan, and we'll have updates for you about our progress in that space in the months ahead. But we're pleased with how our first task force meeting went, where we talked a lot about facility needs. What we're seeing with a number of groups thus far as we ask them for feedback is that there's significant and widespread support for replacing Thornton High School, even though it comes at a significant cost. Given the condition of that facility, that remains a very high priority for parents and business members and others who've been participating in those events. A second tier priority has been expanding career and technical education opportunities and programming. The third priority in terms of things that are more non-traditional and how we've spent money is to find a central warehouse for food and to have a central kitchen that can prepare meals and distribute more appetizing and different kinds of foods to students in our schools. And then the level of change that's received the least support so far is converting some of our schools into P8, preschool through 8th grade environments instead of having standalone elementary and middle schools. So that's some of the feedback we've heard thus far. Our next task force meeting will be talking more about programming opportunities that are not as heavy brick and mortar intensive around facilities. And then we'll have probably 2 meetings beyond that, at least 1, but perhaps 2 more meetings to pull everything together to help inform this final plan that we'll be bringing to you all this spring. So that's a heavy lift, but we're making good progress in that space. And then the 4th significant thing that we have been tending to is the teacher compensation pilot for hard-to-fill schools. And you've just heard a whole lot from me about that topic, and we will continue to work on messaging with our system about some of the ideas that we have and see if there are some adjustments that need to be made so that we can be in a space of having greater success in recruiting some staff into hard-to-fill schools and retaining them over time and providing students just outstanding educational opportunities. So that's the big 4 for me. It's probably going to be the same big 4 next meeting and the meeting after, but it's a busy spring with those things, and we're really leaning in hard to make good decisions across all of those domains. That's it for me.
Thank you. Okay, Board of Education comments, recognition, awards, and vision. We'll start with Director Potter.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Chris, you're not kidding. Those were definitely a big 4 things. Every spring, I'm reminded of how complex the public education system is, and I'm incredibly grateful for our wonderful leadership staff. I think you and our staff have done a great job. You guys always go above and beyond to make sure that everyone's voices are heard and bring that back to the board. So just thank you to our whole leadership team for everything that you guys are doing. It's not easy. So I also wanted to talk about UPK real quick. I think Amira, or Director Assad Lucas, got the short end of the stick by having to go through this process last year. And I'm grateful that I get to do it in year 2. And so just, seeing some of the questions that are floating out there, Adams 12 is enrolling kids already. Go online to fill out all of that information, and then the state portal will open soon. I think it's beginning of March. And so, yes, we have opened that, apply, figure out what you need to do there. I myself have gone through it a little bit, and I've had a pretty seamless experience, and I hope that we can keep that going throughout the rest of time that we have to, or we get to offer UPK, or Universal Preschool. Also, I was able to stop by the first Blueprint Task Force meeting just to kind of say hi. I was really touched by how many different people were in that room, from business leaders to educators to former board members to staff. I mean, you name it, there is somebody from every area of life in that room. So I'm really excited to see some of the ideas that we're able to pull together to create a really strong blueprint plan moving forward. And then I want to give a reminder about the APAC powwow. I know I talked about it last week, or the last board meeting as well, but it's February 17th at 10 a.m. at Rocky Top Middle School. The kids they've been working really hard, and it's something that is pretty unique to our district. And I think if you have the time, definitely go check it out. It's fun. There's lots of opportunities there. There's, I think they said there's a cakewalk and some other fun things. So definitely go mark that off on your calendar if you haven't already. And then finally, Food for Hope is a nonprofit organization that Adams 12 partners with. And in talking with them recently, there is a massive shortage of vegetable oil. So this affects a lot of our families across the district as well as neighboring districts. And so they are currently doing I don't know what you call it, like a vegetable oil drive, where if you bring 4 bottles of vegetable oil, you can get a Food for Hope t-shirt. But really, I think I looked earlier today, it was $15 for the 4 bottles of vegetable oil, and you can drop them off at their office at Thorn Creek Church over in Mission Trace on Mondays from 9 to 5:30. But really anything you can bring to help. I know it seems kind of trivial, but then I think about how often I cook with vegetable oil and how big of a difference that makes. And it's little, but it's a big deal. So any help there would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Marsh-Holston.
Thank you. So I did more community events this last month. I was went to the chamber, Westminster Chamber, who was celebrating their 10-year, and that was very exciting. And at the Butterfly Pavilion, which is just a great place to host an event, and that was a lot of fun. And then the Thornton Chambers Business Award Luncheon, and congratulations to Director Potter and her other hat-wearing job of putting on a great luncheon. And a award to Priscilla for her work in the district, and that was very fun to be at as well. In my mom role, I got to tour studio school, and I know Charlotte's going to be very missed, but that was just amazing to go see what the kiddos are up to and how that school is kind of different in the way they approach the arts. So that was really amazing. And then also got to experience Northglen's theater camp for their youth program, which was very nice that they kept it because it was that snowy Saturday. So it was raining when I brought my daughter in, and so much snow when we came out. But they just did a great job, the high school students. And I will make a plug because they made it several times to go see Footloose at Northglen. Virginia has already told me we're going, and she's very excited. So I just appreciate that they bring in those younger kids and get them excited about theater. So, and then I was very excited to see all the invites for basketball coming up, getting into March Madness spirit. So I'll be going to a bunch of those games. And I think that's it.
Thank you. We might have to up the ante on some of our wagers up here. Start collecting your T-shirts from other
Well, we
schools.
got some new attire tonight.
That's right. Paula, Director Bastelli.
I'll try to be quick, but I have 2 school visits to report on, and I really want to make sure that I do those schools justice by sharing all the wonderful things that I saw happening there. So I might be lengthy, just bear with me. So the first school I visited was 5 Star Online Academy, and that was on January 26th. And what I'd like to really emphasize about this is one of the questions I had was, why do kids attend 5 Star Online Academy? And the answer was somewhat what you would think, but then also there were new dimensions. So she mentioned kids who had been bullied, kids who don't respond well to the loud, raucous environment of a classroom, particularly if they have, if they're on the spectrum. And then she mentioned another population, which is homeless students. And I thought about it for a minute, and when you imagine it this way, homeless kids move frequently. But when they have 5 Star Online Academy, they have this one base of consistency that really probably helps them navigate their situation even more effectively. And they work really hard to do that. So that's one thing I wanted to notice. The other thing is, I think there's a perception that there's no class meetings. They do, in fact, meet at least once a week. And a lot of those meetings are the students lead the activities. So one of the kids I met taught the kids how to do skincare. And I was like, okay, what time was that? I'll show up because I need some help. But yeah, and they also do like guitar lessons and everything else. And it was just wonderful because they say on Wednesday mornings, it's just this really energetic, wonderful space, and the kids can interact in ways where they feel safe, and that's important. They did note that they had a high increase in enrollments this past spring. I think that's something to notice. I think we're seeing it across the districts, is that we're seeing more enrollments in spring for various reasons. And that, of course, puts a strain on us because census takes place in the previous fall. So, that's something we just have to kind of work with. The final thing I wanted to say is what I love about 5 Star Online Academy is that they provide differentiation. Like I said before, some kids don't respond well to a traditional classroom. My kid was actually one of those who did well in online learning. I know there were some kids who did not handle it very well, and that's why I always say online learning is not better, it's not worse, it's just different. And it meets a need for some students that isn't met in other avenues. So they were a great group. The second place I visited was Cherry Drive Elementary, and as I was visiting the schools, I noticed that I was starting to pick up on themes. Like each school had this thing that they were focused on. And what I loved about Cherry Drive is that they really prioritize SEL. They have structured recesses. They also have a significant support need classroom that particularly addresses kids with behavioral needs. So I would assume a lot of kids on the spectrum. And so the structured recess makes tons of sense because it's basically ABA for everyone. And they also had SEL throughout their curriculum. I walked into a kindergarten music class, and the kids were all singing a song about zones of regulation, and they were really into it. And when they got to the anger part, it was hilarious. And, you know, it was a lot of wonderful reinforcement throughout. And I think Liz is creating a wonderful culture there. Liz Jordan's the principal. And the last thing I want to share about Cherry Drive is last year I had the benefit of visiting with a friend to see their fun run. And I'll show you how well they have their EQ down. I watched the preschoolers doing the fun run. And when they got started, it was the most precious, adorable thing I'd ever seen. The kids were holding each other's hands, and they kept encouraging each other, keep going, don't give up. And when they got tired and they had to go to the sidelines, they kept cheering each other on. And so it was a beautiful thing. I think it speaks to the culture they're trying to create there. And it was just marvelous. Last thing I want to do is share a quote from Marian Wright Edelman in honor of Black History Month. She is a wonderful advocate for children. She founded the Children's Defense Fund. And she said, education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Director Assad Lucas.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. Yes, I am glad to hear that your experience with UPK, Dr. Potter, is much more smooth. I got to a point that I just blocked the text messages last year, so hopefully that is not where you are now. And yes, Studio is a great school. I'm so glad you got to tour it, and Charlotte will be deeply, deeply missed. However, a nice thing for Cosby to be able to see is the all-school musical that will be in May. And it's always the weekend after our marathon of graduation, so whenever that is, that's when the all-school musical will be. But I'll definitely share out that date later. So this past couple weeks, I wasn't able to get into any schools, but attended the Five Star Foundation board meeting. I'm the board liaison for the foundation, and again, such a fabulous organization. They do so much for our district. They contribute in ways that help us be successful and serve students in ways we otherwise probably wouldn't be able to. And so I just want to make sure to, their big fundraising event is June 6th. It's at Topgolf. It's their biggest fundraising event of the year. It's such a great opportunity. There's so many different business leaders there, education leaders, district leaders, and just people who support Adams 12 and want to give back. So definitely keep that on the calendar. I also was able to attend the SEAC meeting. There were two of them. There was one in person, one online. I did the online one because I wasn't able to do the in-person. But another really great meeting. There was a wonderful turnout. I mean, there were probably 20-some, almost 30 parents that were there, and I guess there were about the same number of the in-person. And so it's just really great, wonderful questions. There were breakout sessions, so I attended the IEP breakout session, and parents were able to ask really specific questions pertaining to their own children's IEPs or 504 plans, or maybe more broad of what it looks like, what team roles are in it. So again, I really strongly encourage, even if you don't have a child with a 504 IEP, but just to learn more about the process and what it looks like. It was really well put together, put on, so I'm excited for future meetings. So on, oh my gosh, whatever date that was, Friday, a couple weeks ago, President Goldstein and I jumped on a plane at 7 a.m. for DC and attended the NASBA, or National School Board Association Equity Symposium, which was the Saturday, right? Yeah, and then the Advocacy Institute, that was Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday we spent all day at the Capitol. But this was my second year attending, and it's so informative. It's such a great way to network. There were really great speakers there. I mean, there were even last year, but this year was really, I think, much more focused on IDA and fully funding. We had the two senators that are co-sponsoring, which is Senator Bill Cassidy and Senator Chris Van Hollen, both come and speak at the Advocacy Institute, and just why they support education and why IDA needs to be fully funded. You know, and then other really great breakout sessions that ranging from Title I funding to federal law, school nutrition and lunch programs, AAI. We even got a set on a breakout session of the firm that's doing the lawsuit, the social media lawsuit. So that was really great. Got to ask questions there. Wonderful. One of our speakers too was Temple Grandin. And so if you aren't familiar with who she is, I think she still is on staff, but she was a former professor and at Colorado State University who worked to develop more humane systems for the cattle industry. And so what I liked, while I was there for my undergrad, she came into I can't remember which class it was. I think it was my social psychology class, and talked a lot about being on the spectrum, what that was like, growing up, the challenges. And this was even back when autism was just kind of coming out as a diagnosis and trying to understand it more and all that. So it was just, you know, I felt really privileged to be able to have her come and speak to me at early 20s, and then get to see her again this past week, talking about the similar things, what education and, you know, not having this box and making sure we are thinking of our neurodivergent students. So especially with the focus of IDEA. And then we went to the Hill on Tuesday, and I think we met with all of our representatives or their staff except for one, or our elected officials, or two senators and representatives. There was one that did not meet with us, but yeah, it was great. They were supportive. We got to share the importance of fully funding IDA. Some of our representatives have signed on to that bill. You're gonna have to tell me if I missed somebody, but it was Representative Caraveo, Representative Pedersen, Representative Crow, Representative Negus,
We had two groups, Buck.
Buck,
And
Representative
Lamborn.
Buck.
I think Lamborn too.
Did he? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
All right. Yeah, so it's really good that we have so much support with funding IDA. So kind of going into why that is so important is I was late to our work study session because I had to take my youngest to Anchor Center for blind students to get to visit the vision clinic to assess him of what devices he will need for kindergarten to start school. And, you know, it's a process. It was great. He did well. It's tiring. But one of the devices, just one of the devices he will need is $3,000. It's like starting price. And so I even asked him, like, do they give discounts? And they do not. But that's 1/3 of our per pupil funding. And that's just one device for one student. It's insane. And so, again, it just really highlights why fully funding IDA, making sure our state understands the importance of funding special education, because we have, 10 to 15% of students identified either, I think, with IEPs or 504s, but, and I could absolutely be off, but, so some of those students might not have as high needs, but there are students who have significantly more financial needs. And we have to make sure that we are supporting those students, and we do, and districts do. It falls back, and we do it. And that was one of the big discussions with our representatives is when we don't get that federal money or that state money, the district has to figure it out, and we do. We figure it out because those kids deserve that, and they need us to, but we need to make sure that our elected officials are fulfilling the obligations that has been promised 50 years ago. So that's my big thing. It was just kind of hit home after spending 5 days really talking about it and focusing on it, and that experiencing it as a parent today of why that's so important. So lastly, I just want to thank North Glen High for the incredibly thoughtful mug and shirt that they shared, and then Thornton High for giving this certificate of recognition for involvement. You know, we have fabulous high schools in our system. Fabulous schools altogether, but Thornton High is definitely where my heart is for multiple reasons. But, my child goes there, but also I drive by that school like 700 times a day, it feels like. Like 2 blocks away from my house. There's not a time I don't go to the store that I don't run into a student or an educator or somebody from there. It's my neighborhood school, and so it's just near and dear to my heart. So I just want to thank both those schools, though, for their thoughtful gifts. So that is all I have. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, and congrats on the recognition. All right, so since our last meeting, I went, January 19th, I went to the Colorado Association of School Boards. I'm on their board of directors now, and they had a retreat, and it's really kind of cool to meet board members from different places in Colorado and listening to the challenges that they have and listen to the things they do and share what we do. And it was really a great bonding experience with my fellow board members. Excuse me. On January 22nd, so we had Priscilla and Bo and Phil and Chris and Lori Bailey, and I went to North Glen High School with the Colorado Attorney General, Phil Weiser, and we went into Casey Nunn's classroom. Whenever I start talking, I get kind of dry. It was the most amazing experience. I think we were all very impacted by it. Basically, it was her A-Push class, which is a Advanced Placement U.S. History. And they were juniors and sophomores and juniors. And it started out with Phil asking them a few questions, kind of a recall on government, and they knew the answers. And then he talked a little bit about how he ended up where he is today, and then he opened it up for questions. And the questions they asked were very impressive. And before we knew it, the class was over. And it was just so engaging, and it was such an honor to have somebody take the time to come up our way to spend some time with our kids, and he was very impressed. So, like we were. I went to Thunder Vista on 23rd, and that's a P8 up north, and cruised around there and saw what the wonderful things they're doing there. And Paula, you mentioned that each school has their own little personality of how they do things. And at Thunder Vista, they have 4 houses. And they've named their houses after 14ers in Colorado. But they don't all, and the houses have kids from all across the board from P through 8, sorry. And they aren't grouped together all day. They have their own classes, but they come together in their house. They're called houses, kind of reminds you of Harry Potter. And they do their SEL development in that space, and it really builds a sense of community. I went to the equity engagement meeting on the 24th, and Marie McKenzie and Manny Gonzalez had that going on, and they had a teacher from Horizon High School, lead us in an activity. And the activity I'd done in the past, it was generations, and how we have different generations of folks, like the baby boomers, the millennials, the Y and Z, and that kind of stuff.
The difference, I think, for me this time was I think I was the only baby boomer in the room. I was didn't want to say anything because I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. But it was a good activity though, and it really does put things in perspective, how we look at things based on how old we are and what we've experienced, and it talked a lot about significant events in your life that you always remember. And I remembered almost every single one because they went way back. I too went to the Thornton Chamber luncheon. Thank you, Courtney, for putting that together. Then I went to IBS on the same day. Went to DC. My takeaway from that, it's always a great experience, and Director Assad Lucas really did do a nice little summary of it. Dr. Temple Grandin is just an amazing woman. I've seen her several times over the years because I was a special ed teacher, and she was a speaker at the Council for Exceptional Children, had an annual thing every year, and she was the keynote. She has an amazing sense of humor, and it's very dry, but it's there, and she really puts her point across. And the things that she's accomplished with, what she's faced have been amazing. Shadow Ridge, I visited them on Monday and had the privilege of being part of a lockdown drill. I got to hang out with the resource officers while they went around the school and made sure everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing. And the resource officer from STEM Launch was part of it, and that's where my son goes, so I've met him before, so I hung out with him. We didn't have a ton of kids hiding in the corner in the rooms that we evacuated or inspected, but it was a very well planned and well executed activity. And then afterwards, we all debriefed on it, found out where some of the kids were not the best, or where some of them were really good. So it was good. And then yesterday I went to Vantage Point and I helped kids. I did an exercise in interviewing with them, mock interviews. So I met some great kids, and I asked them questions and talked to them about interviewing skills and how what they're doing great and what they could improve on. And then this morning I went to Tarver and wandered around Tarver for a while and saw some of the great things going on there too. So it's been busy. With that, we will move on to general public comment.
Good evening. The board welcomes public comment to learn about the preferences and concerns of the Adams 12 5-star community. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Please use the microphone and state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments. Please give any handouts or information you would like to share with the board to Lee Coca here to my right. Speakers will be prompted with a sign letting you know you have 30 seconds remaining. Please begin to wrap up your comments. Speakers will be informed when time has expired. Please end your comments at that time. We actually have only one speaker, Mr. Scoville. It's not sounding like it. Sir, I don't believe that one's working. Can you try one of the others?
One on?
There we go.
Thank you. Thomas Scoville, Thornton. This last weekend, I did my taxes. I was pleased to see that thanks to the defeat of Proposition HH, my Tabor refund will be $800. And I'd like everybody to know that you're eligible for a Tabor refund even if you don't have a tax liability. All you need to do is file your income tax return. I did not know that when I first came to Colorado. And while we're on Tabor, I'd like to thank Governor Polis for fighting to keep Joe Biden from taxing our Tabor refunds. This shows that as futile as lobbying elected officials may seem, it does work from time to time. And speaking of lobbying, now would be a good time for you all to lobby the feds and state about stopping the ongoing tidal wave of illegal immigration. Denver schools are being overwhelmed, and their mayor is asking for federal and state bailouts. This is problematic because the federal government is broke. We have a $34 trillion debt, and we're running $2 trillion deficits each year. So I hope you're not looking for money from the federal government. The president we elect in 2028 will have to use all the federal taxes he collects for Social Security, for Medicare, for Medicaid, or debt service. Any spending beyond that has to be borrowed, and that will grow the deficit, the debt, more and more. The best solution is simply to close the border now before the district is overwhelmed. Denver obviously is a harbinger of things to come. You should lobby to have the president close the border. New law is not required. He simply needs to enforce current law as required by his oath of office. Sadly, the U.S. Senate border bill that Biden and company are pushing goes in exactly the wrong direction. Happily, that bill was stopped today. As I said, Denver's a prelude for Adams 12 and schools across the country. Absent a prompt solution is going to look like your appetite to sell more debt and to raise taxes is simply a means to fund the coming influx of illegal immigrants. In any event, state and federal funds spent on this problem will mean less for Adams 12. You and your colleagues in government at all levels need to decide whether you want to continue our generous welfare state for all our legal residents or to have open borders. You cannot have both. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Committee Liaison Report. DAC, Director Bastelli?
There was no meeting, so.
Okay. All right, board business. First off, Stargate School Charter Renewal. I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution renewing the Stargate Charter for a period of 5 years as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have anything to add at this time? We had the presentation last time.
Director Assad Lucas,
Aye.
Director Battistelli,
Aye.
Director Goldstein,
Aye.
Director Marsh Holshin,
Aye.
Director Potter.
Aye.
Congratulations, Stargate. And you do amazing things there, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a little anticlimactic.
I
just
know.
would say that I really appreciate the team at Stargate. I think they're honest about where their strengths are and where their opportunities to improve are, which is the same mindset that we like to have with our district-managed schools. They're very open partners with me and other members of our team, and I just respect the team and respect the work you're doing for students, and I'm glad that you're here for another 5 years.
And thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for all you do for 2E and students, so.
Okay, on to Prospect Ridge Academy Charter Renewal. I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution renewing the Prospect Ridge Academy Charter for a period of 5 years as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Does anybody want to say anything before we vote?
I mean, I can come up with questions, but I don't
Well-
really have any. I think you answered enough last time.
And you too, thank you. Well, let's vote and then we'll.
Director Assad Lucas,
Aye.
Director Battistelli,
Aye.
Director Goldstein,
Aye.
Director Marsh Holshin,
Aye.
Director Potter.
Aye.
I too appreciate what you do there too. It's always a joy to come check you guys out too.
I do want to say a word of thanks to the young woman back there who helped facilitate all of those evaluations. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was, again, thanks for hosting us and touring, and you guys have a great school. So thanks for all you do.
And I'll just say congratulations. When I think about the journey of PRA, I was newly appointed into this role when the PRA charter application was pending years ago, and it was a bumpy and difficult start to that relationship with the board saying no and state board appeals, and then there were challenges around site and location. And notwithstanding that difficult start, we have established a really strong partnership and support of kids in our community. And April, you've been there from day one, and they're lucky to have you over there. David, the finance guy who's sitting there with the red jacket, worked for us for a number of years too. So I know just starting at some of the upper levels of the organization, there's just superbly talented folks. And again, glad to have you around for another 5 years as well.
All right. Next on the agenda is Imagination Library. We have with us tonight Gary Cooper from the Westminster Rotary. Point of privilege, I'm a member of the Westminster Rotary too. And it's amazing what our club is able to do. Gary took over with the passing of Roger Gutenkopf, and the Rotary has made partnerships with a lot of different organizations and done really great things at the state level. So I'm going to let Gary tell us an update.
Real quick, sorry, Gary.
It's okay.
You charter folks are welcome to go home. You guys don't have to stay the rest of this long meeting. You guys have plenty of children that throw up in your parent pickup line right before school's out to go tend after. So get out of here and go rest.
Good evening. My name is Gary Cooper. I am a representative of the Westminster Rotary Club and chairman of the Imagination Library Committee. Just to kind of a review, Imagination Library allows us to enroll children in the program from the day they're enrolled until they're 5 years old. They get a book a month that's mailed to them, addressed to them. It's free to them. And the funding for the books, we pay for them. Dolly Parton and her staff handles all the backside. So it's a very wonderful program. So our goal at Westminster Rotary is to have all of the 38,800 kids under the age of 5 in Adams County achieve kindergarten literacy readiness. And to put that graphically, we're sending kids up that are kindergarten ready so that the kindergarten teachers are not rowing with one hand and bailing with the other, so there improves the opportunities for all of the kids. Among the affiliates, right now there's 64 counties in Colorado. There are currently 50 affiliates, and currently Westminster Rotary leads the state in the number of books provided to kids, and we're ranked number 20 in the nation. Last year you funded us $25,000, helps us to provide 75,103 books in 2023 to 4,087 kids in Adams 12-5 Star School District. And during that year, we graduated 3,761 kids from the program. That means you have nearly 4,000 kids moving into your kindergartens we have at this time 8,000 children that are enrolled in the program, and that's our entire enrollment, and you're 4,000 plus of that 8,000. A little history of Westminster Rotary. We started out with, in 2012, we affiliated with the Imagination Library at that time. We got a $3,000 grant from Westminster Legacy and $3,000 from our club to start working on the program. And we were hoping to enroll 250 kids in that year. There's two things that you have to do while you're involved in Imagination Library. You have to find the kids and you have to find the money. You find the money first and then you can find the kids. when I got involved, I joined the club in 2014, and Roger Gudenkoff and Mike Hayes, I hung out with them and got involved with the program. Mike and Roger were both fairly heavily involved. And Mike asked me when I first got in the club, he says, we have this program and we can't find the kids. We don't know where to look. If you got an idea, let me know. So that's where I started out. So this is the number of books that we have been furnishing to the kids over the years. In 2012, the year we were trying to get 250 kids in, we got 65. And 13, we managed to get up to about 160. And by 2014, when I joined the club, we had 200 kids. Since that time, we have pretty much improved almost 50% every year. Last year, as we said earlier, we managed to send out 75,103 books. The cost of those books to the club, which is the affiliate, is $25 per person per year. It is the most cost-effective program that you can imagine. So in the beginning, we went to elementary schools all over Westminster to mostly the most indigent groups. We were trying to catch the kids that really needed the help first. That's why we got 65, but because there's not a lot of kids that are in the elementary schools, we were trying to get them to get their siblings to join up. As we got better, we had always had a relationship with College Hill and Irving Street Libraries. Jean Ward was our data secretary. She entered all of the kids in and kept track of the stuff associated with going through the computer. And I was writing grants during that period trying to get us more money. And finally, I found 2 or 3 different programs that added us so where we had like $15,000, and we thought we were hot shit. So at that time, I was talking to Jean and told her about the money, and she goes, well, can you help my kids? And I says, I don't understand. I don't know what you're talking about. She says, well, in both of those libraries, we have under a 5-year-old reading programs every week, several times a week. And I said, sure. So that was our big bonanza of suddenly finding a pool of kids, and turned into 600, 700 kids a year just from those 2 libraries. We went on to looking at, as you can see, Child Find and CASA, Foster Care of Adams, Growing Home, our Hope House. All of those programs, we went to them. They were limited in the amount of people they could send us. They're not huge programs, but that helped us work on that. And then we got involved with EPPAC, and it's a good and bad side. And EPPAC represents the high school girls that are pregnant. And they became a very large group of people, which was disappointing, but all of their kids are being enrolled. So anyway, right now, we've turned a page on how we're looking for the kids. And we started going to all the daycare centers in your district. And there's 52 that we have located. But as it turns out, there's 198 of them. So we still have quite a large group. And then we're responsible for all of Adams County, and there's 362 daycare centers in all of Adams County, and we're going to get all of their kids. It's going to take us a while, but we're going to get to them. We have 20 people that are on my imaginary library volunteers, and so they're going to be putting some miles on their cars. In addition, we sent out, we bought a list of under 5 families with kids under 5. We sent out 17,000 postcards. And it's a pretty expensive project. It's probably the only time we'll do it because we'll be going through these daycare centers, and we have plans in place to go to visit the 10 maternity wards in Adams County. From my experience in chatting with the nurses and stuff, they each have about 100 babies a month. And so if we can get them all hooked up this year, that will add 12,000 kids to our enrollment just there. So we're excited and scared. So just for reference, access to books is the key to successful reading and development. "60% of low-income families have 0 books in their house. Of all of the 100% of the low-income families, they only have an average of 4 books for each household. If you don't have books, you're not going to learn to read. Children in low-income families lack essential one-on-one reading time. They don't have books. Average middle-class family has 1,000 to 1,700 hours of one-on-one picture book reading time. The average child in the low income has 25 hours of one-on-one reading. The most successful way to improve the reading achievement of low-income children is to increase their access to print. Communities ranking high in achievement tests have several factors in common: an abundance of books in public libraries, easy access to books in the community at large, and a large number of textbooks, all things that are available to the members of Adams County. The only behavioral measure that correlates significantly with reading scores is the number of books in the home. An analysis of national data set of nearly 100,000 United States school children found that access to printed materials, not poverty, is the critical variable affecting reading acquisition. So, when working with the librarians at College Hill, one of the librarians helped me, or she supplied me with a survey, and at the time I was courting Temple Buell Foundation. And she provided me with a survey. It was based on Fluff and Wonder, and they liked it. So I developed a couple of surveys that we are using successfully to prove to people that we really have something that is going. And we send out our first survey, which is to people who have been enrolled for less than 6 months. And we asked them what their reading habits were prior to enrolling with Imagination Library. And later I send out a survey to everybody who has been in the program for at least a year. And then we compare the results. And in this portion, we've got 60% of the children were not familiar with Imagination Library, 50% have less than 20 books in their home, 50% read to their kids before enrolling, 85% read to their kids after enrolling. 40% of the children asked to be read before enrolling, 70% of the children asked to read after enrollment. 30% read alone less than 5 or 3 times a week. 77% read alone more often after they've enrolled in Imagination Library. And then I developed this question. Those questions were, I generated because of a Pam Toller, who works with Imagination Library. She had a video, and she set up a bunch of graphs that told us what their results were. And so I went back and developed a question to mimic what she had to ask in order to get the answer, and that's how I created the survey. One of the things she didn't ask was, how does it impact the family? And 60% of older siblings are reading more after their younger sibling enrolls in Imagination Library. So the 2023 survey is, we have better information, and it's more indicative of good signs. 75% of the kids are new to Imagination Library in that year. 53% have fewer than 20 books in the house. So now 43% read to their kids every day before, 85 read to their kids daily after. 37% of the children ask to be read to before, 71% of the children ask now to be read to. 24% read alone more than 3 times a week. 84% read alone more often after enrollment. And 71% of the older siblings are reading more after enrollment. So I'll catch my breath here in a second. So one of the things that has really changed our world is that in 2020, the Senate proposed a bill to grant matching funds for money spent with Imagination Library. And Roger and I were asked to speak at that, and we got to prove to them using our simple graphs, the simple stuff, and talk about how much things were really going. And by March of 2020, the bill was passed, and by July of 2020, Governor Polis had signed it into law. So now every dollar that we collect is $2. And so it's really turned us loose. I'm not sure can I get inside this?
Today, I'm happy to announce the statewide launch of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library here in Colorado during Family Literacy Month. What was imagined by Senate Bill 185 is now a reality with the Imagination Library here in Colorado. One of my goals is to make Colorado the very best state for children and families. And we know the most important factor in a child's success is early introduction to books. And we're proud to start connecting more children to books with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, a program that embodies our commitment to making sure every family and child thrives. When you enroll in a local Imagination Library program, you get a free book every month from birth through 5 years of age. And this statewide expansion builds on the work of local champions in Colorado who've been placing books in the hands of children for years. And I want to thank so many who've worked hard to expand this program. Senator Bridges, Senator Tate, the Colorado Department of Education, thank you for leading this expansion. The first priority over the next year is to recruit and partner with new affiliates across the state. Knowing how vital early childhood education is, we couldn't be more excited about the mission of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library and our partnership. I also want to thank American icon Dolly Parton, who made such a powerful dream a reality and who has changed the lives of countless children for the better across our entire nation, and now more kids right here in Colorado.
Hi, I'm Katie Anthus, the Colorado Commissioner of Education, and I'm so excited today to celebrate the expansion of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library to the whole state of Colorado. Ensuring that students are reading on grade level by 3rd grade is our most important priority here at the Department of Education, and we know that an early introduction to books helps us meet that goal. I want to thank the partners who brought the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to Colorado, the governor, the legislature, and the State Board of Education. We know that this will be a game changer for the children of our state. And most importantly, I want to thank Dolly Parton for making early literacy one of the most important priorities, and she continues to help the entire nation reach this important goal. Thank you.
This is Dolly Parton. I want to personally thank Governor Polis and Senator Bridges for leading the way to bring the Imagination Library into your state of Colorado. And we've still got some work to do, but we're going to get there. So let's put some wings on that imagination library. Let's get some books in the hands of more children. Thank you for helping out.
So our proposed funding at this time has gone up quite a bit. We were at $157,000 in cost last year. Next year, that would be 2024, is next year. We're looking to spend $514,000. The state will supply us $257,000, and the rest of it is up to me and our club to generate that money. Adams 12 has been very generous with us for the past 3 years with a $25,000 contribution to our program. With the growth that we're seeing and the number of children that we're going to be impacting in Adams 12's population, we would request that we get $40,000 in this appropriation. And as you can see, as you work along, we're getting modest, if you will, except for Brighton is again a very big program. We're asking for little bits of pieces to get us up to the $257,000. I'll be visiting all the other names on that board and asking them to help us out in this endeavor. So there are approximately 16,200 children under 5 in Adams 12 5-star. We can reasonably expect to enroll 90% or 14,580 children with your funding and our enrollment efforts. I think all of the paths that we have to finding the kids will allow us to do this. The cards that we have set on your are the cards that we pass out at events. We did Westminster Films in the Park and went there and passed them out. We had the Santa Claus event at Westminster City Hall. We pass out those cards, and when I do it, I tell the people I give it to, I ask them if they've got kids, and I was surprised I had about 100 people that accepted the cards. But I was more surprised that I had probably 30 families that were already enrolled. And so I mentioned to them, and hopefully you can take advantage of it, those are not one-time use cards. If you have a kid that you can enroll now, under 5, enroll them. If you have a sister or family members, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, you can enroll all of them. We are essentially leveraging you as volunteer imagination library. Excuse me. So we hope we can count on your support. Any questions?
More of a comment than question. My 3 youngest were all recipients of Imagination Library books, and it's funny, it always had, Imagination Library always had this magical ability to know which book to send at certain times. But the last book that they send now, that we have 3 copies, because my youngest just turned 5 last month, and so we will no longer, fortunately, be getting, but the last book they send is Readiness to Kindergarten. So now we have 3 copies, and when I was going through the books, saying, okay, we don't need all these copies, let's get rid of at least 2 of them and give them to somebody else, and it turned into a fight of not their book, not their copy of it. And so it really does make an impact. And so thank you. Thanks for your efforts and making sure these get in the hands of.
Well, thank you. When I first got involved, I started enrolling my grandchildren in, because all of my kids were too old. I wanted to prove to myself what they said, how it acted, what impact it had on my grandkids, and I was sold.
I just want to thank you for the time that you've contributed to this effort, all of the grants that you've written, and going around and visiting these daycares and advocating for this sort of money. It must be a full-time job, so I just really appreciate it.
It's well worthwhile. Thank you for your time.
And obviously I appreciate what the club does, but some of the stories you hear, like there were a few recent ones where the birth date was after they signed up. They knew they were having a C-section on a certain date, and so they were signing their kids up for Imagination Library based on that C-section date. But yeah, so it's taken off.
I get an email or two, and as I mentioned earlier to a gentleman over there today, or yesterday, Director Mary Beth Beznali contacted me and requested being a data clerk. And so she is currently a data clerk and has been enrolling your preschool kids in now as well. So
You have to be enrolled one at a time. Thank you, Gary. Okay. All right. Next is the Rocky Mountain Partnership presentation. I see some of our friends from Rocky Mountain Partnership back there.
There we go. I'm not the best with tech, although my team might disagree on that because they're always asking me for help. Hi, my name is Asha Ettinger. I'm with the Rocky Mountain Partnership. I'm the Senior Director of Institute and Strategic Supports. A lot of words to say. One of the big things I support is data and training and development. And I'll let my colleague introduce herself.
I'm Jody Nowicki. I am the Senior Director of Collaborative Action with the Rocky Mountain Partnership, which is another bunch of fancy names for really supporting the people that are doing all of the work that we're going to talk to you about today.
We are so excited to be here. We've had a long-standing partnership with Adams 12, and today we're hoping to share with you the 2030 strategic plan, which we're calling the Resiliency Project, to empower 71K by 2030. So this plan has been a labor of love for the past year plus in Adams 12 5-star schools, as well as 50 other leaders from partners and organizations across this North Metro region. Experts from this space have all come together to craft this plan, and we're going to talk about specifically Adams 12's engagement as well. This strategic plan was obviously developed in alignment with a lot of other types of plans and reports when it comes to educational success and what paths look like for our young people, our students, and our families here in Adams 12 and beyond. So a lot of what you'll see will feel familiar, especially with your emerging blueprints. And so we're excited to share that with you today. A little bit about us, for folks that may not be as familiar, is we are a group of leaders and community members who are working together. Our goal is to ensure that every young person across this region has the opportunity to embark on a successful journey to economic and social mobility. I'll talk a little bit about what that means in just a second. We are part of a network that utilizes a globally recognized framework and data to make sure that we're doing impactful work that matters, right? It matters when our young people and our families have what they need to thrive. And so when we come together, we're all about uniting our decision makers and stakeholders, which Jody plays a huge role in, to create a future where every young individual, all of our students and our families, their potential is realized. And I know that's a key piece of what you all are working on here in this district. And overall, we hope to see an economically prosperous region where every young person, regardless of their background or circumstance, can be successful on that journey. We're one of 70 partnerships across the nation who use this framework. We're really all about enhancing community well-being and empowering individuals from early childhood through their careers. And also, that byproduct of that being sustainable and inclusive economic growth. Our national mothership, if you will, Strive Together, has set a big, audacious national goal to put 4 million more young people up to age 35 on a path to economic and social mobility by 2030. And we've set a goal that many folks in Adams 12 have had a hand in crafting as well. But how do we measure that? What does economic and social mobility look like? It includes a lot of things, and the work you do here in Adams 12 to support our students and families here is a big part of that. We recognize the following milestones are critical for individuals to meet along their journey to economic and social mobility, starting with kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency, which the last speaker touched on through the Imagination Library, all the way up to 8th grade math proficiency, high school graduation, and then beyond, enrollment in a skill training or education program, skill and credential attainment, employment at a good wage, and all of that leading to overall economic and social mobility. We know these aren't the only things that matter, but they do help us at least kind of track the journey of our young people and their families along the way. And we measure these along with other types of things that come into play, like housing and basic needs, in a data scorecard, and that helps drive what this work looks like. We are a place-based partnership in the North Denver metro region, the biggest part of that geography being Adams County, and the biggest district in that region being Adams 12. This region, as you know, I don't have to repeat this, you all are familiar, we have a fast-growing region, and we have so much here to offer in this region in terms of making sure that our young people and their families are equipped with what they need. But we know that that also comes with some challenges, right? In our community, only 39% of adults have the education and skills that they need to get those good jobs. And the pathway to get that starts much earlier on in their journey. And I know one of the things that was talked about, the Blueprint Committee, which Superintendent Godowski mentioned earlier, is that skill building, those CTE classes that really help build those skills. We also know that housing is an issue, not just for our learners and their families, but also for our workforce here, especially in the education sector. We know that across our region, over half of our renters and a quarter of folks who own their home are spending more than a third of their income on housing. That's a big proportion. And we know that we need to grow our local talent pipelines to meet employer needs and support our families to thrive. Every year, we need about 15,000 more individuals earning skills and credentials in order to meet those needs. We also know that there are a lot of resources coming into the community, but there's such an opportunity to come together to maximize their impact. And some of the things that were mentioned earlier were things like federal funding running out. With all of those things in tow, how are we coming together as a collaborative network to address these challenges, right? We know that 2 in 5 Coloradans across the state say they're worse off than they were a year ago, and we know that that holds true here in this region as well. Without these measures, our region faces widening economic disparities, unmet workforce needs, and a strained community fabric. We won't see all of our young people and our families thrive, but that's where you all come in and the other partners who have committed to this effort. Our region can't afford the wait. At the end of the day, an estimated 123,000 young people are not on a path to economic and social mobility. And when we look specifically at the K-12 portion of that goal, we're looking at probably around 10,000 or so young people, not even including their families, who are part of Adams 12 5-star schools who fall into that bucket. And so there's a huge opportunity for us to continue to work together to make sure those young people and their families, all of them, all of your students, all of your families, are able to thrive. We know that this number is going to grow, not just in Adams 12, but everywhere, right? And so we're doing what we can by working together to figure out what that looks like. As a network, we've set an ambitious goal to ensure that 71,000 more young people are achieving those key milestones to success. Towards this, our strategic plan, which Jody is going to talk a little bit more about the actual action, which I know everybody gets excited about once we get through the data portion, it's going to guide us through our initial phase, which we are calling our resiliency phase. This aims to get us back to the rate at which we were at prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has impacted and continues to impact whether we like it or not. And we're going to be measuring our progress of the improvement of these metrics so that we know when our young people and our families are economically and socially mobile. That's the first step, but that's not going to be enough to get us to where we need to go. We have a couple of other phases that will build on that once we reach that 71,000 goal. A second phase focused on sustaining that once we get to that juncture. A third phase, our growth phase, which we're going to gradually ensure that even more young people and their families are on a path to economic and social mobility. And then phase 4, which is speeding up that rate to progress. You can see we're going from starting with 71K, potentially up to an additional 150K people across this region. That's a lot of young people and their families. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Jody to talk a little bit more about the meat and potatoes, which is like the work. What do we actually do together?
Is this one on? It is. Okay. So like Ashley said, there's a lot of data on the back end, and we did a lot of work to set that baseline and set that target and even know where we are. And then we also did the work to identify what are we going to do about it now. There's so much that goes into this, but the network has started with these 4 priorities, and a lot of this information is summarized on the snapshot that you have in front of you. But first and foremost, we need to accelerate the number of young people who are earning skills and credentials aligned to good jobs that are going to allow them to thrive as they grow and grow their families. We also want to reduce housing barriers that disrupt the education, skill development, and employment journeys of our community members. In addition to both of those things, we know that we have to do a better job of engaging, consulting, and co-creating solutions with those who are most impacted by these challenges that Ashley just talked about, and I'll dig into in a little bit more deeper in a second. We are not addressing the root causes of these challenges to the level that we need to actually achieve our intended impact across the board. We also need to grow the number of organizations who are aligned to that target that Ashley just talked about of 71,000 to really identify their portion and responsibility of that. How do we as a community chip away at that big, hairy, audacious goal together? Again, I don't think that these challenges are going to be news to you, but I want to highlight a couple of the really specific challenges that our region faces that the strategic plan has outlined strategies to address. One, we know that there's a mismatch between skill development and the needs of employers, which is leading to skills shortages. There's also not enough opportunities for the training, work-based learning opportunities, and that there's gaps in acknowledging the skills that are gained through experience, which leads to limited pathways for career advancement. That journey is often fragmented and difficult to navigate to even know what opportunities exist. And I heard a little bit about that in the opening comments too of how people even know what is available to them. When thinking about housing, not only from the learner and family standpoint, that the lack of housing that's affordable can disrupt education and skill development, but from a workforce standpoint, and thinking of the district also as an employer, that contributes to high turnover rates, which impacts productivity and talent retention. I already mentioned a little bit about the decisions that are being made without input from those who are most impacted consistently and authentically, which can lead to gaps between intentions and outcomes. And then what we previously had is the lack of a regional approach to common goals. On the very back of your overview, what you see on the slide here is kind of outlined as a grid. And I know there's a lot of text on this slide, but there are a lot of strategies that all of the players at the table that Ashley alluded to earlier helped to shape that fall into those 4 priority areas. And then within them, there's specific projects that I will really highlight where Adams 12 is currently and likely to plug in the future. first and foremost, improving that coordination between industry and skilled credential providers. Director Potter is engaged in a team already there focused on starting with advanced manufacturing and really improving how skill development providers are coordinating with each other, and then also with industry to better match those needs. Re-engaging individuals in our region who have started some sort of post-secondary, but wanting to put them back on that pathway so they can finish what you started. And creating more opportunities for young people to acquire those skills and credentials while they work and are earning the dollars that they need to support themselves, and expanding the training sites that are available. Including CTE, but also thinking about more innovative solutions like employer sites that might be able to serve a dual function and serve as training. This fourth bullet on here, career ladder maps, is something that we'll be launching specific project in a few weeks specific around this, but really this idea of visualizing for our learners, what are the skills and credentials that you can earn here, and how do those ladder up to actual jobs and actual employers in our region? What supports are available to help you access those things, and how do those build chutes and ladders wise to each other to really not necessarily have to decide this is the one pathway I'm going to take, but really be able to see what the options are and what the return on investment is, so that we don't continue having our young people taking on a lot of debt and not necessarily earning the wages that they need to be successful. There's a lot on here, I know. I think that the very last thing that I'll mention here is ensuring that every young person has access to a highly trained mentor who will help guide and navigate them along that journey. We are partnering with a few organizations, including CASA, the Court-Appointed Special Advocates, to take a incredibly effective volunteer-based model and take the elements of that, apply it to career success navigation so that we can really amplify and maximize the number of volunteers who are highly trained to help a young person and their family with that one-on-one attention throughout their journey. I think I might have shared this when I was here last year, but these are our 5 priority industries that we're starting with, and we have landed on these in partnership with AC Rep, Adams County Government, Metro Denver EDC, a lot of our economic development friends, thinking about not only what's here right now, but what industries are going to be here in our region over time that we really want to support all of the strategies that we're talking about. And I mentioned that we're going to do this through projects. The strategic plan that was publicly launched last week that you have the overview of will be added to in the coming weeks with overviews of really specific projects. So we will make sure that that is information that makes its way to you. The how we're going to do this, as many of you know, Ashley and I are 2 of now 10 of the backbone team. So our team is skilled professionals that really help to lead the collective efforts, provide the project management, the data support, et cetera. We are neutral to all of the individual agendas of folks at the table, but not neutral to this result that everyone is seeking. And then the partners, like so many Adams 12 team members, are the leaders and community members who are actually working together to implement this strategic plan, setting regional goals, engaging in progress, and holding accountability to that impact. The regional target champions is new, and I mentioned this earlier, but these are the organizations who will establish their own individual goals that are aligned to that regional target and then actively track progress towards them. And this is something that Ashley's team really steps in to provide support, that they don't have to have the capacity or even knowledge on how to do that, that our team provides the coaching and technical assistance for those folks to be able to do that. We always call out how Adams 12 shows up in our leadership. Our Community Leadership Council is comprised of leaders from over 40 organizations, as well as civic influencers who are committed to our mission and vision. And Gabby Chavez in the first picture that you see is the chair of our Civic Influencer Council. Sarah Hughes, right below her, is actually an Adams 12 grad, and she is a phenomenal vice chair of our council, and they sit side by side, Superintendent Gadowski, and everybody else that you see here to really drive the strategy of the network. They are the executive committee for the larger Community Leadership Council that we wanted to just show here, that we are also really proud and excited that Lori Bailey continues to represent the district here. So when we think about engagement and what that looks like, I want to highlight where Adams 12 shows up, but also let you know that these new digital badges are being released. I told Lori Bailey actually earlier today that my goal is for Adams 12 to have all 4 of those ribbons. You currently have 2, but I want to really support you as a district to think about like how we can continue to get involved in this. So what's already underway? Adams 12 is uber engaged in the work and the projects. I already mentioned Director Potter is engaged in this aligning skill development efforts alongside Christy Weaver in the career and tech ed space. We are also, Ashley and I are participating in the Blueprint committee meetings and resuming conversations with Joe Ferdani about how we can mobilize civic influencers to support whatever ballot initiatives result from those meetings. And that's also inclusive of conducting impact assessments and gathering voice and perspective to really support those efforts. This third one here is a little bit newer. I want to just call out that it looks a little bit out of place, but it isn't. So we are going to be incubating and supporting the launch of a juvenile assessment center for the 17th Judicial District. As many of you likely know, when the link closed its doors last year, it left a gap in the community not having a place to do youth assessments. And so we were contacted by the district attorney to see what support we might be able to provide in applying our results-based accountability framework to the launch and sustainability of that. So Adams 12, Lori Bailey is part of this CJCC, which is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, along with a myriad of other cross-sector partners that Rocky Mountain Partnership will be working with to have this be stood up as its own 501c3, and why this is important and relevant to our strategic plan. So we really see this as integral in supporting young people and their families, not only to engage on pathways, but to stay on pathways to success. And the volunteer mentors I talked about is kind of an element or flavor that will be woven into that work. And the other areas that we're talking with the district about engagement is around increasing learning at work opportunities, specifically registered apprenticeships and paid internships, and then the career ladder maps that I mentioned. One opportunity for all of the partners at the table is to become a regional target champion. We have a few early adopters that have signed on, and really what this means is looking at those metrics that Ashley shared earlier, the cradle to career outcomes, starting with K readiness all the way to employment, and identifying what are those metrics that your district, your organization impacts, looking at baseline data and setting concrete goals that will ladder up to that 71,000 goal. So setting annual goals, but then all the way through 2030, and then with support from our team measuring progress towards those. And then civic influencer model, which I've alluded to a few times, but not only are we supporting, compensating, resourcing, and training young people ages 16 to 24 to serve as civic influencers for our network, but we're also supporting this model to scale. Westminster Public Schools has already launched a network with 4 current students and 1 recent alumni, really applying this model of authentic community engagement within their district. But things that our team is able to provide, not only that support, but tools. We've learned a lot of lessons the hard way that we are very, very excited to share with others and really support holding fidelity to a model across our region. As a reminder, I'd like to share with you what our civic influencers did in 27J. In 2022, 27J in Brighton, Colorado, for those who don't know, third least funded school district in the state, was going after a mill levy override for the 7th time. Hadn't passed one since I think the year 2000, as Sarah Hughes said. They haven't done this since before I was born, and now I'm here to try and help. But really the approach was not business as usual, supporting young people to get the information, understand the information, and deconference room the language to then be able to go out into the community in the way that they knew was authentic, instead of, the way that it always had been done, and we're able to get it passed by a larger margin, I think, than anybody thought that it would be. And so they've secured an additional $17.7 million annually for that district, which has been a huge win. And Gabby Chavez, who is a 27J alum, is now also serving on that mill levy oversight committee, which is really, really exciting. But the magic there was really in supporting those young people to have the tools and information and resources needed to go out and convince community. I think even some of our civic influencers, I'll keep picking on Gabby because she's from that community, said, when I started this, my dad told me there was no way he would ever vote for this because he doesn't want his taxes to go up. And by the time I was done, he was out there advocating for our friends and neighbors because he understood it in a different way. One of the things that we're really excited about being on the ground with Adams 12 at an earlier juncture in the process is that there's more opportunity for that authentic community engagement, including things like allowing civic influencers and young people to help even shape the language that goes on a ballot so that it makes sense to people when they're reading it. So again, like I said, a lot of hard lessons learned, a lot of really exciting successes, and something that we're really, really excited to continue to support Adams 12 with. And then finally, Invest. This is another one of the ribbons that Adams 12 has. And so just a thank you. I mean, this district has been engaged in the Rocky Mountain Partnership for years, continues to be an investing partner and event sponsor, and allow some of our team members some office space here. So we are greatly appreciative of that continued support. Any questions?
Thank you. It's always good to find out what you guys are up to.
Yeah, you guys do great work, so thanks.
So the board's a pretty quiet group tonight. I will just say that one of the things that I'm committed to doing is setting some of those targets around things like kindergarten readiness, third grade reading, 8th grade math, graduation, et cetera, so we have some really tangible things, ambitious goals for us to move more kids to a place where they can be successful. So we look forward to doing that and letting you know where they are so that we can start getting to work and making that happen.
Thanks, guys. Good to see y'all. Hi, Alessandra. Which leads to the next item is Proclamation Public Schools Week. I will entertain a motion to adopt the proclamation declaring the week of February 26th through March 1st, 2024 as Public Schools Week in Adams 12 5-star schools as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I think like tonight, some of the things that we've had, just I'll tie back to how important public education is and how it's a great way of raising the floor for a lot of people. The great equalizer.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It really is the great equalizer, and it provides opportunities to kids and families that otherwise would not have them. And I always share this. Like, my father grew up in Nazareth, Israel, where at that time, at least, there was not public education, and he really valued that when we were growing up as a parent and the importance of it, and so really instilled that value of what schools provide for many, 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 many families and children.
Director Assad Lucas?
Aye.
Director Battistelli?
Aye.
Director Goldstein?
Aye.
Director Marsh Holshin?
Aye.
Director Potter?
Aye.
Okay, on to the review of board bylaws. You have the marked up copy and then the clean copy that we've talked about a little bit. Phil, can I, oh, there you are. Right. You're over there.
So this topic has been on the agenda for 3 straight meetings, and I'm pleased that we are able to speak about it tonight before 11:30 p.m. I can go through my suggestions point by point, if that's the will of the board, and I will start that unless you tell me not to.
Want to? Okay.
All right, starting right at the top, I suggest you might want to consider changing section 1.2, the purpose of the Board of Education. I think that statement there is probably dated and probably goes back to the early days of policy governance. It says that the purpose is to achieve appropriate results for appropriate persons at an appropriate cost. And I suggest you might want to consider something like, the purpose of the Board of Education is to govern the school district to achieve the district's vision and mission in accordance with state and federal laws, board policy, and these bylaws. I also think it might be helpful to put what the purpose of the bylaws is. In addition to being required by state law, the purpose of the bylaws would be moved to enhance the efficient and orderly organization and operations of the board as it governs the district. One of my comments was that we should take a look at board policy 4.5 because that's referenced in section 2.3. I have reviewed board policy 4.5 regarding board member code of conduct, and legally, I don't see any reasons to make any changes to it, but the board is always welcome to review its own policies and make revisions as it deems fit. Section 2.3.1, there's a dollar amount dictated by law as a restriction on gifts to board members and other public officials. The amount currently listed is $65. Through inflation and changes in state law, that is now $75. I believe that changes every 5 years. I suggest we update the bylaws to reflect that. My next revision is in section 3.2, where we talk about if the president isn't here, then the vice president takes over. In the absence of the vice president, the secretary. We go through that list, and at some point, we would not have a quorum and not be able to conduct a meeting. But I suggest that we change the last person listed there from seniority, which could be misinterpreted as the eldest person on the board, to the length of service. Next comment has to do with section 5.4 about when additional meetings are called. Do you always have to have it on a Wednesday? I don't think that's current practice. And I would note too that if you always look for a Wednesday, you'll probably conflict with a DAC meeting. So you might want to drop the Wednesday requirement and just say, at the convenience of the majority of members or something to that effect. Section 5.4
9 says, discussion by board members will be limited to 10 minutes per member per agenda item. The board may vote to allow more time on special issues. I've never seen that, anybody keeping time on that or enforcing that, and I thought the board might want to look at changing that.
I think there have been members in the past before your time that might have gone on and on at times.
I believe what Phil was saying was that it hasn't been monitored, not that it hasn't happened.
I could probably make some changes to it that would give the board flexibility to remind someone that they've been going on for quite a while, and it might be time to either let someone else speak or to call the vote, but that's up to the board. Section 5.10, I recommend clarifying the difference between the virtual meetings and then the other part of the bylaws in section 6.0, which is electronic attendance at in-person meetings. We did a quick fix during the pandemic when we did a shift to virtual meetings and made some quick changes to this, and I'd rather revise that now to make it clear that occasional electronic participation under state law in an in-person meeting is different from having a virtual meeting for purposes of adverse weather or another public health emergency. So those suggested changes are in 5.10, and then I mentioned in 6.10 that this section, 6.0 of the bylaws, addresses electronic attendance and participation during in-person meetings and does not apply to meetings held virtually under 5.10. A similar clarification was made in 6.8, and 6.9 was updated to reflect that it's bylaw and not policy. Seven 7.1 addresses minutes, and you'll see the start of a sentence that's not completed. That's a placeholder just in case we wanted to add any details about how the minutes should be written up. There's not much guidance in state law on that, but certain public bodies have developed routines or practices over the years where some minutes are extremely detailed and say, this person said this person said that. I prefer meeting minutes that reflect what happened, but not necessarily a blow-by-blow explanation. For example, discussion was held on whether to, allow the band to go on a trip or something rather than what each board member thought about it. So you might want to add some detail there if you want to, or you could simply address that as the minutes are presented each time and let the person preparing the minutes know what level of detail you would expect. I suggest some revisions to section 9.2 regarding the preparation of the agenda, and I made some changes to that that I believe reflect current practice, where the president determines the agenda with the advice and input from the superintendent. I believe that's how it currently happens, and I think that's been working fine for years, so I think you might want to have the bylaws reflect that. Section 9.5 addresses public comment, and I made some pretty extensive suggestions there, again, to reflect current practice and to state what we currently include in our agenda and part of what Francis reads as part of the introduction to that part of our meetings. I mean, the current bylaws, I think it says that it's limited to 15 minutes, and I've never seen that enforced. In addition to the changes that I've suggested, I've given some further thought to this, and I would recommend that I be given some direction to add a little bit of flexibility to the public comment section so that if there was a certain time limit or something, an hour or two or something, so that you can get to other business, or you could change the order of when public comment happens so you could get to some business, that could be adjusted at a meeting based on the majority will of the board. I think 9.6 should also be revised a little bit, that if someone wants to make a formal presentation to the board, they can do so on education topics, and that they should make a request for that, and we can grant that on a case-by-case basis, rather than an expectation that anyone that wants to make a presentation on any topic can do so. I recommend adding a new section, 12.0, that just outlines some basic information about how appeals to the board are handled under various appeals that can come before the board under district policy, and that the senior executive assistant to the Board of Education coordinates the scheduling of the appeal, agenda planning, working with the board's legal counsel, and ensuring communications with affected persons, which is exactly what Francis does now. But I think it reflects current practice and a good practice moving forward. What I'm not sure of is whether Francis's replacement will have that same job title, so that may need to be tweaked. Another part of the current bylaws that I don't think is followed, and I don't know if you want to keep it, is that at the conclusion of each meeting, any person may discuss the board's performance or progress, including the president's role, at the conclusion of each meeting. It's currently in 13.3, and maybe it's happened before I got here, but I've not seen it in 9+ years. And I don't know if you want to keep that in your bylaws. I recommend that the review of bylaws section be tweaked a little bit to give the board additional flexibility, so you're not stuck with this agenda item at the second meeting in December. As you note, tonight is not the second meeting in December, and I'd like to see some bylaws flexibility there as far as when they are addressed. And that concludes my recommendations.
I think the history of the evaluation at the end of the meeting came from when we had a district school improvement team, and they would come to these meetings, and at the end of every meeting, one of them would give a little evaluation.
It's actually based in board policy, so there is a policy that requires that there's regular evaluation of the board's conduct at each meeting. So that policy would need to be looked at as well. But yes, you're right, Lori. One of the ways that was done over the years was to have DSIT do the review. And then I believe after that, it would no longer happen.
Okay, we need to give Phil some direction here.
If you don't, I'll write up what I want and I'll send it to you for your next meeting, and then you can give it thumbs up or thumbs down.
What I will say is that all of the changes you've suggested I think they're great changes for clarity. And the only one I have a question about is the 10-minute, because I think it might be good to have a maximum. I didn't know I could speak for 10 minutes. I would have brought a slide deck. No, I'm kidding. Just a case in point.
What number was that? Yeah.
The 10 minutes? 5.9.
And I suggest that, I mean, in all due seriousness, in the interest of, time, and also just making sure everyone has an equal voice and an equal say. So,
Is it possible to say may be limited instead of will be limited?
Yeah, you could make it like, you could say will or may, you could say may, and you could say approximately 10 minutes, so we don't have to have someone with a stopwatch.
So that if somebody decides that it's getting a little out of hand, they can say something? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think there's other ways to address that too, and that is to call the question. And if a majority of the board wants to call the question, then we can call the question, and that could limit the filibuster.
can you interrupt the speaker to call the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, to Paula's point, I think it's important that we either follow it or we don't. I think it's being in that gray area of you may be able to sometimes and not others, kind of, I think, could get in a little bit of a hairy situation, but also board updates is an agenda item, if I'm not mistaken, right? Does that count at the beginning? We were talking about all the things we've done.
That would be true.
And I know that we frequently go over that, and sometimes we have a really long agenda, or we have a packed agenda, and so, it might be good to keep that time limit in there and just be mindful and not only of the staff's time, but of everyone's time.
I could play around with that a little bit as far as what I've heard you say so far, and maybe give you a few different options. That a board member could have up to 10 minutes to, discuss a topic that's near and dear to them, unless more time is granted by a majority of the board or something like that.
Well, I have a question. So if, say, the verbiage was to be, up to 10 minutes, but somebody on the board made the motion to move on, you could still do that, right?
So the will of the majority would potentially override the 10-minute? Yeah. Well, I think the 10-minute might be a protection of the minority there, that if they wanted their 10 minutes, they could get their 10 minutes.
But you can only call the question if there's a motion on the table, right?
Yeah, but usually the motion is before the discussion.
I know, but with our comments, there's no motion.
Oh, back to that particular topic. Discussion will be limited to 10 minutes per agenda item. I mean, if you want an exception to that, I think we could put it in there. I might suggest that be more like public comment in 3 minutes with a 30-second reminder.
Well, and I know, for example, I'll just use Thornton City Council as an example. I think, don't they limit their comment time per member of their council? If I remember.
I don't know.
They do. I think they just raised it, but they do have a time limit. Well, here's also what we can do. We have to visit this again in a year. Maybe kind of think about how long are we taking to talk, and think about, if we need to revisit that part of it next year. Now that we've all realized that we shouldn't talk more than 10 minutes.
I think they're both good options. If Phil wants to come up with something for the next time we meet to consider, that sounds good too. And if we're still hesitant at that point, we can give it another go around the sun.
Phil, just a question.
Options.
Just a clarification. So with the way that's worded, would it be 10 minutes for everybody, not each?
It says per member.
It's each, and it's per topic. I mean, if you want to start adding that up, we could have some really long meetings, because we could be 50 minutes for each agenda item, and how many agenda items? So I might say you could
I was
invoke your
actually-
10 minutes, once per meeting or once per per month or once per quarter, but
Well, and I was thinking specifically about the board comments. So it was,
it's for each board member as written.
Anybody else have any feedback for Phil?
All of 9. I was just quickly looking at, because I know there's an accessibility to public meeting bill, and that we had kind of discussed it. I was trying to quickly scan, but I think it's gonna change that anyway. So that might be something we need to consider.
If state law changes, bylaws would probably have to
I was
change.
gonna say one of those being.
But we don't know what that's going to be yet, if anything, and
If it even passes.
yeah. There's some accessibility laws that are going to go into effect July 1 that could have some impact on this too, but I don't have to put in the bylaws that we have to follow state law. But our bylaws can't conflict with state law, and that would happen if that current bill is enacted.
Well, and one of those I want to consider, and I don't know if, again, we need to revisit it now or next year, is how we do public comment, and just if we take public comment online.
Right. That's the big part of that bill. I think that would affect us.
But even if it doesn't pass, I don't know if that may be something we want to consider regardless, as an accessibility, and also being board members who serve people with kids who can't always leave their kids at home to come speak to us. Just a thought.
There are other ways to communicate with the board as well. But
Right. Like email or, yeah. All right. Well,
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next, questions for February 12th meeting with DTA. So you have the questions. Dave Lockley and I worked through those. There's only 3, but history tells us that it's really all you need, because you put those out there and we get a lot of information. So,
Yeah. How many did we have last year?
we have only had 3 last year. We
That's
only
what I
ever
thought,
have,
right.
there's only ever really 3
And that filled
the whole time.
the whole time, right?
Yeah. So, and then if people know what the questions are ahead of time, they can think about what they want to say, and they can give us lots of information. So is there any thoughts on any of them?
No, I think these, I mean, I think these are good just because they're broad enough. I mean, they're specific, but still broad enough to, keep to engage in conversations in different ways, so.
It's always one of my favorite meetings of the year.
Yeah, I enjoy it too.
Okay. Here we have our questions for Monday's meeting. And we're at Silver Hills. All right, moving along. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 17th, 2024, and the work study session minutes of January 17th, 2024, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Director Assad Lucas,
Aye.
Director Battistelli,
Aye.
Director Goldstein,
Aye.
Director Marsh Holshin,
Aye.
Director Potter.
Aye.
Okay, on to the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the personnel actions as listed. Resignations and terminations, transfers and reassignments, employment and leaves of absence.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Director Assad Lucas,
Aye.
Director Battistelli,
Aye.
Director Goldstein,
Aye.
Director Marsh Holshin,
Aye.
Director Potter.
Aye.
Okay, future agenda items. So we got the board meeting on the 12th with DTA at Silver Hills. 28th is the next board meeting, and you see the topics that are listed here. And is there anything anybody wants to add or say?
I mean, it could be a good idea to consider the newcomer increase. But I don't know if that's something we want to, we're talking about the next agenda, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Paul, are you wanting more information about how many newcomers we've had during the course of the year, where they're at?
Yeah.
Implications from some of that change?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Yeah, that'd be a good work study session topic, maybe?
That sounds great.
Okay. Well, nobody has anything to add. I'm going to call this meeting adjourned at 9:08.
It's not 11.
It's not 11.